A very good morning to you. Welcome to Motivation Monday, where we bring you challenging conversations and inspiring stories. Well, today we have another conversation for you, and this I hope will bless your heart, but also I hope it will be an eye-opener for you. Today we are talking about opportunities in tech. Yes, I know we keep saying, oh, the world is moving fast, technology is the new venture to get into. There are all manner of things that we are talking about as regards to the technological space. The question is, are there opportunities that you and I can take advantage of within this tech space? Well, that will be the conversation that we will be having today. And joining me for this conversation is Edward Korir, who is a data analyst at Safaricom PLC, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. But before we get to the conversation, I have a question for you. What opportunities do you think, according to you, actually currently are present that people can take advantage of within the technological space? What opportunities do you think are available and people can take advantage of within the technological space? Do share with us. 20316 is our SMS line, 0786 316 316 is our WhatsApp line. And so let's get right to this conversation. Welcome, sir.
Thank you very much for having me.
It's good to see you.
Yes, good to see you as well.
Yeah, I know I've mentioned that you are a data analyst at Safaricom, but tell us a bit more about who you are, so that, you know, as we journey along, we may appreciate who we are dealing with, so to speak.
Okay, thank you. As you mentioned, my name is Edward. I usually go by my first name, but I work at Safaricom PLC. I'm a data analyst, and what that means is I try and help them make use of data. So primarily I build data processing systems, and then I make sure that, or I help them make use of that data once it's prepared in a format that they can make sense of. So is it reports? Is it, I think as we go along, I'll explain more about analytics.
Yeah.
But is it basic reports? Is it predictive reports? Is it what questions are there? What insights are there?
Yeah.
And so that's what I help them do. Yeah.
All right, thank you for that. How did you get yourself here? Is the tech space something you stumbled upon, you know, and voila, you found yourself at Safaricom, you know, the dream of many people actually? Or just tell us a bit about your journey towards you getting where you are currently.
So my journey begins in about 2001, and that's the first time I ever handled a computer. I remember I was in class 8, and at that time our school introduced computer studies. So for the previous 7 years we didn't have any engagement. But I think at that time computers were beginning to become more and more mainstream. And so that was the first time I ever encountered one. I had no idea what it was. I had heard my dad talk about programming. He'd mentioned about it. And he had talked about how it was a very difficult field. And I think in his time, they were using computers to develop solutions, especially with regard to aerospace. So they were very advanced programs. So that's what he mentioned, and I always knew it was something very difficult. But in 2000, when I started, it was very basic. I think it's called Paint and starting up a computer.
Yes.
So that's how I began. And I knew nothing. But the year following, when I went to high school, when we began studying it a bit more. So I didn't have a very good concept of it, but it's actually my older brother who I would say got me into the field, because he was studying engineering, electrical engineering, and he bought his first computer. And so I had a feel of it.
Yeah.
And that's how I discovered I enjoyed it. When I was now in high school, because of that exposure that I had, I did quite well in computer studies. It wasn't that I was actually good at it. I just had been exposed to it.
Yeah.
And so it became easy. So it became a path that I considered. So fast forward later in life, when I was about to go to university, my dad, he wanted me to do electrical because it had offered more opportunities, but I wanted to do computer studies. So he told me, why don't you do this? Pursue electrical, and you have the option of branching later towards computers. So that's how I did electrical engineering, but with a mind of doing computer science or computer IT things. And that I think was a good decision, because since graduating, all of my roles have been in IT. Now, IT is one of those fields which is quite dynamic, which means you have to keep keeping yourself abreast. And so later in life, now having spent some time doing what's called system support, and I think this will throw a bit of a span in the works.
Yeah.
I believe, and this is my story, that the Lord led me to what I'm currently doing. Our organization had an opportunity to train some students, some employees, to pursue 6 emerging skills or advancements that were in technology.
Yeah.
With the aim of being fit for future. But I had no idea of what I'm currently doing. I had no idea about a field called data science. So one morning, I just thought, why don't I go and find out what this is about? And when I went, I discovered, well, I'd like to pursue this. And so my career took a direction. This is in 2018, towards the end of 2018.
Yeah.
And I was selected as one of the 10 who went and studied that. And that's how I got into this current field that I'm in. It's data analytics.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's interesting how, you begin from electrical engineering so you're actually an engineer.
Yes, I was trained as an electrical engineer.
That's interesting. And then, with an interest in the computer field, and now a bit more narrowed into data science. Yes. Wow. Now, let's talk about, just the space of technology for a moment. It's one of those that, depending with what side you are approaching the conversation, you could hear, mambo ya technology wachana nayo, because of the vices that come with it. But on the other hand, you're talking about these opportunities, this myriad of opportunities and the potential that technology accords and offers humanity. From your experience, but also from what you know, what would you consider, so to speak, the good, the bad, and the ugly as, comes to this particular issue of technology?
So I think that there are tremendous opportunities, first of all, in technology. Depending on what you think about the landscape, there are very many opportunities. Do you want to solve problems that are to do with connecting computers? So that's networking. Do you want to solve problems that are to do with securing computer systems, that's cybersecurity? Do you want to get into the field of data? So there's data management. So there we have things like data engineering, database development. Or do you want to make use of specific use of data? So that's analytics, data science, AI, and machine learning. There are so many fields, it's a very, very broad landscape. Yeah. And I would encourage anyone to, if you've got a passion, consider what you'd want, and then you'd fit into that. Yeah. But when it comes to the good, the bad, and the ugly, first of all, we as a society we're becoming more and more digital. And what that means is that we solve many of our problems using computers. And that's a good thing, because computers do what we do just much faster and with greater accuracy. So I think that goes without saying, their benefits. As I was just getting into this field, I remember watching a video about, I think it is stroke, and how one of the most important things is to be able to detect stroke early. Early detection, the earlier you detect, the greater the chances of minimizing the negative effects of it. Yeah. And that has always been a problem. But I watched a video where they had developed a model, a machine learning model, which could help them predict stroke fairly early and arrest it before it became bad. So that's one of the good things about it. Wow. Yeah. But there's the other side of the coin. And unfortunately, there have been very many bad effects of machine learning and AI. There's also another story I watched, a lady in MIT who, she wanted to try and use one of these models to, and so a model is a piece of software which you, using data, you train it, and then it can mimic the functionality of a human being or some other functionality. And so she was trying to scan her face and detect her face. But every time she put her face, it could not detect her. And the problem was that they had only trained it with the faces of white people. So because she was black or of African origin, then it could not tell who she was, and so that became a whole discussion. So that has been one of the problems that has arisen, and others. I think another example is something called surveillance capitalism, where it is big business to harness the data of use people's data as maybe as a government or as an entity, but not for their benefit.
Yeah.
And so another example is like in China. In China, currently, you receive a social score, but the way they assign your social score is by very close surveillance of who you are. They have cameras which can, with very, very high accuracy, differentiate you. So if it sees you, it can tell that this is Pastor Mokaya, he is this height,
wow,
this is what he's doing. And if you're and if they can record you doing something like, let's say, crossing, you know, in Kenya we cross the street, we don't use the designated spaces, then your score is affected, and it becomes difficult even for you to get a loan. They're able to tell how confident are you when making, let's say, a loan application, by how fast you're typing in your characters. And so these are some of the good, the bad, and the uglies of my field, of my technology. And I am specifically talking about AI because that is the field which I think, as you have seen, is emerging quite a lot.
Yeah.
I think there have also been, I don't know if you've ever noticed or ever seen any videos where you can see someone like Donald Trump making a certain a speech and saying certain giving certain information, but actually it wasn't him. They have been able to, they have simulated him.
Yeah.
So how do you tell apart the truth from what is
a lie? Yeah.
And these are some of the challenges that we have with technology. That
we have to deal with.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Now that we've gotten into the whole, field of AI, especially as a current technological advancement that we have to deal with, and since you're talking about opportunities, I don't know whether, you saw that thing that Elon Musk, created, where he's able to send rockets and they're able to land, and you have these things that are able to hold them. I don't even know what the technical terms are, but those are the kinds of advancement we have made in technology. That kind of precision, that is so amazing. But and we'll probably get into how do we avert this negative side and effects of artificial intelligence. But when we come to the positives, and especially when it comes to people taking advantage, what is available? What is available for us in terms of properly utilizing this particular technological advancement?
Well, so if you mean by available, I believe you mean the use cases.
Yes.
So there are very many use cases that are there, and the way we approach it in the field is to solve current problems that we have. But there are a myriad of problems. I mentioned that in my field, in what I do specifically, my work is data processing. And what I try and do is I try and do whatever was being done manually by some of my colleagues. That's what I try and automate.
Okay.
Yeah. And so there are very, very many use cases. I would always go back to what is it that you're currently facing? What is it that you're trying to solve? What is it that you're going through that you can try and you can see how to apply it? I was talking to my wife, who is also in the medical field, and I was discussing with her about some of the things that she does. And I was asking her, in what you do, are there any things, is there any use case which you think we could use a certain approach? And I think the approach that I was considering was one called image recognition. Is there any use case that is there? And she mentioned that there are certain, for the most part, they're able to make detections or treatments, but sometimes there are certain, there's an effect, I think, that you have in the jaw, where it's very confusing whether it's one ailment or another. Now that's an example of one of that.
Yeah.
I had mentioned another for stroke.
Mm.
In the field of cancer, being able to analyze X-ray images and to detect what is the likelihood that what we are seeing is cancerous.
Mm.
That's another example.
Yeah.
I think in the US for a long time, they're called hauliers, those long distance truckers.
Yeah.
That has been a big career for many people. But more recently now they are now venturing into the possibility of self-driving cars.
Ooh.
And they're doing that because it's both a problem and a solution.
Mm.
It's a bit of a problem because for the people who are faithful in that field,
Yeah.
they feel like, well, this can never really replace us.
Mm.
But at the same time, there's been a decline in the number of drivers who are available to those truckers. They're called truckers.
Mm.
So that's another example. So there are very many opportunities that are there in AI.
Yeah.
Yeah, in this field.
Ah, okay. I like in terms of just the opportunities that you've given us. I would want us to take a break, but when we come back, I want us to think about now the ordinary common person that's probably just starting, with computers, and how someone like that with interest can take full advantage of some of these things. Maybe they may not have the privilege of, say, going to school and studying formally, but are there still ways that perhaps someone can still equip themselves and advance and take advantage of, these kind of opportunities? But I want us to take this short break, and then when we come back, we continue the conversation.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So kindly do join us after this break. Welcome back. This is Motivation Monday, where we bring you challenging conversations and inspiring stories. And today we are talking about opportunities in tech. Yes, the world of technology. That is what we are talking about today. I began by asking a question. What, in your opinion, are the available opportunities within the field and within the world of technology? Do share with us. 20316 is our SMS line. 0786316316 is our WhatsApp line. Our guest today is an IT expert. He is a data analyst with Safaricom PLC. Edward Korir is our guest. My name is Elijah Mukaya, your host. And so let us get back to this conversation. Welcome back.
Thank you again.
Now, before we went on that break, I had said when we come back, we will talk about how one can seize the opportunities that are available. And we are talking about just the average person, or, in our own local dialect, mwananchi wa kawaida. Before we even get there, when I was younger, you would finish high school, and it was tradition, because you needed to be computer savvy. You must go and do computer packages. I think there were 9 packages, if I'm not wrong. In the world that we are in currently, do you think there is any need, would you advise someone to go do the 9 computer packages, or however many they were?
Well, I don't think I would. Yes. Let me take you even further back.
Yes.
When I was younger, I remember before that, the most relevant course you could do was, I think it was called typesetting, typewriter skills.
Yes.
That was that. So when I was a very young child, I remember that was what people needed to have. Then it became computer packages.
Yeah.
And that was the case because at that point, that was how you would demonstrate that you are IT savvy, or at least you've got some skills in IT. Unfortunately, nowadays that is not very important. Very few people check for that. In fact, they assume that
you already you can type on Word.
They assume that you can. We now have this on our smartphones. It's possible to have Windows, things called Office. That suite. So it isn't very relevant. It's assumed that you have it, but no one will really check that you have it.
Yeah.
And that's what has happened. But maybe more towards your question about opportunities. It's actually quite surprising that, and this is something that I've encountered, the people who are quite good at what they do are self-taught. It is not a formal form of education that they have gone through.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that those are bad or not useful. But the real life challenges that you need to solve cannot be taught in a classroom.
That's true.
And it's the same for me. 95% of what I do and what I use, I learned on my own. I have not gone to school. I only went for 6 months of training, and that was very basic. But what you will face in the office and day to day and with real life problems are you need to the question is, do you want to learn it? Will you look for a way to learn it? Are there opportunities for you to learn it? And the answer is yes. Very many free resources. They are actually free, and they are legitimate books that you can get online and read. There are websites where you can go and get tutorials.
Yeah.
I haven't even mentioned YouTube, because the people who anything they learn, they post. That's the best way to learn. So if you are, all you need is a computer, and you do not need, and they have become more and more affordable. I think I bought a few months ago. I bought a whole computer for, I think it was less than 15,000.
Really?
Yes. You see, most people may think that I need to get a sophisticated piece of. No, you do not need. They're called refurbished computers. Once you have that, the cost of internet has gone down.
That's true.
Which means if you wanted to go, you could go download some of these things and have them on your 15,000 computer, and then spend some time reading, spend some time learning. I'm yet to find someone who was taught everything that they learn in class. And some of the people I work with fairly brilliant people.
Yeah.
And they're all self-taught. Which means really it is up to you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that most of the people who are really good in their field are actually self-taught. And you know, and here you're talking about, you know, the various sort of spaces of opportunities you're talking about. So whether you're talking about web design, even data science, somebody can teach themselves and
whether it is networking, whether it is programming, whether it's data science, if it is in web development. In fact, web development is usually the what I would call the landing. It's the easiest of all of them. Now it gets quite complex once you get into what's called web services, because you're now developing front end and back end, and the whole solution as is used nowadays. But the entry into it, in fact, I have seen even I think it's called edX. There are free courses you can get from MIT. So you will not get a certificate, but the content, the knowledge is there. Yeah. So whichever field that you'd like to learn in, all you need is an interest. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. One thing that happened recently when the conversation started shifting from packages is that programming is an essential skill that almost everyone, you know, should have at least a level of knowledge into programming. First, do you agree with that? But also, for the sake again of our audience, what do we mean when we talk about programming?
So, programming really is about being able to communicate an idea to a computer so that it can run that.
Okay.
And it involves developing algorithms. Now that seems very complicated. I remember as I studied, I realized a lot of the confusion is just in jargon. But let me put it to you in a very simple way.
Yeah.
It's just a way of telling a computer what to do.
Okay.
That's all it is. Even the word programming is just to program. So there are different what I call languages that you can use, but at the end of the day, at the heart of it, it's just giving a set of instructions to a computer that it can carry out a specific task. Now, it is becoming more and more a necessary or an important field or a skill that is required. But it is not easy and it's not difficult because there are very basic programs you can learn how to write. The question is, are you willing to take time and the patience to learn the skill of writing programs, developing programs? I am not as good as, you know, I don't consider myself an expert in this, but I have developed a level of proficiency where I can actually solve problems. But I was not always like this, and it's a question of just progressively learning. Every day, learning something new daily. If you do that consistently, then you'll be good. And so I think it is good for people to learn how programs work, even if you do not know how to write them. Yeah. So that if ever you're in a situation where you need to help in developing a solution, then you'll know the right approach to take. Yeah. So what I would say is, at the very least, just get to know what programs are, If you're interested, take time to learn it. But at the very least, just understand what it's about.
Yeah.
Because it is a landscape in learning.
I did, I think one of my packages I did is MS-DOS. Is that like part of like entry level into programming, or what were those things I was doing?
MS-DOS was the operating system that used to be used before Windows. It was the first of the Microsoft DOS, disk operating system. And what it was, rather than using your mouse to select an icon and click and all those things, MS-DOS was you write commands to achieve the same things. So if you want to create a directory and create a file inside there, let's say like tomorrow's sermon, now you do that using commands.
Okay.
So that's what MS-DOS was.
Oh, so it's not programming. Here I was thinking I have a bit of skill in programming.
Well, it's an entrance into programming, because then you get to understand also, if I need to do this, then that's how it's like the door. It gets you into the system. And then you can start writing what are called batch files, which actually are simple programs.
Okay. One of the things about IT, and most people when they think about this tech field, usually it's the money. To be honest, I mean, I want to be rich, I want to be famous, I want to be like Nelson Mandela, the mantra for many young people. And so IT seems to offer that. What would be your advice, especially for those that are merely thinking about the tech space and the opportunities in tech merely just for the potential of the monies that they can rake in?
I think if you approach it that way, you could make the money, but I don't know whether you would build a career and build the profession, because we often underestimate the amount of value experience has, and experience is very important. Everything you learn should build into what you're doing, and if your goal is just to make money, you might stumble upon it. You might along your way you might be able to make that money, but what next? I mentioned, and it's my story, that is the Lord who led me to this profession. And the Lord doesn't do things just for the sake of it. There's always a deeper purpose. There's always a bigger picture in it. What we're currently covering, the faith and work at our local church, and it's very interesting to consider that I can actually create value on earth as I serve God, and it is not just financially motivated. You see, and I think of course at the end of the day we have some family that we need to provide for, and so we need to get remunerated for what you do. But if money is all that your goal is, you may do it. But I have heard of people who make a lot of money and lose it. So I don't think that wisdom has to come alongside what you're doing. So it would not be my advice. I think it's a good space, a good place where there's some very well-paying jobs, but those also need you to be quite good at what you do, and you cannot work hard just to make the money. I think that there is more to it than that.
There's a greater motivation.
There's a greater motivation.
Okay. You mentioned something when you're talking almost as, though technology being a tool. And how I see it is it can be a tool for good or a tool for evil. And you mentioned on a side of that where one can see this as something God-given, to provide solutions to humanity, to honor God by bringing things that make life a bit more easier for people. But it's the other side of this tool has been used for great evil. What are some of those things? And I think there are people who, again, maybe if the motivation is all about money, I could still be in tech, but what I am doing, adds no value to humanity. It actually deprives humanity of dignity and all that. What are some of those areas, perhaps?
I think the worst that I have seen is it's called the spyware. And there's a a system that was developed, I think, in Israel that has got tremendous capability in terms of surveilling. So what that system could do is it is possible for it to, and you install it without realizing on your phone.
Yeah.
The moment it has been installed on your phone, it takes videos of, it uses your camera to take videos of you. It records all your calls, it records all your messages, it records everything that your phone is transmitting.
Wow.
And I think that is the worst that I have seen. And interestingly, this is, well, it's just for me, I realized it has been installed in very many countries, on the phones of very many presidents and many leaders, except in the US. Which means that I think, I guess that's, anyone will be the judge of that. But the point that I'm making is that's an example of one of the bad uses of technology. I think another one that I know of is the development of warfare, or in developing warfare that has got that kind of intelligence. I heard once that I think they were testing out certain, I think they're drones, which are able to, because of this capability of recognizing someone's image, then they can do targeted attacks. So rather than just go and blow up a whole place, then it can look for a specific individual and attack that person. And you see, I think those are the examples which I think are bad. But there's also the whole issue of automating people out of their work. We're currently in the 4th industrial revolution. And with every industrial revolution, there is a segment of professions that becomes redundant. That always happens. So if you think about when, I think except for the third, which was, or the second, which was the reciprocating engine, when Ford developed his cars. Other than that, any time there's an industrial revolution, it's always accompanied with a large number of professions becoming redundant. And because we are in the age of information, as Daniel prophesied, you remember, then what happens is a lot of what people do, we don't need them to do anymore. So I think those are some of the negative impacts of technology. And it is important, and that's why it's important for yourself to keep yourself both with your own skills, your own, whether you're a doctor, whether you're a pastor, whatever you are, but add to that some knowledge of IT. Know what's happening. It's not too difficult nowadays to learn. Just get informed with what's happening and stay abreast. Okay. Thank you for that. I would want us to take another break. When we come back, we begin wrapping this up to hear a bit of this specific field that you're in, of data science, that maybe may pique somebody's interest. What does that look like? And some more advice to people who are actually considering this as something that they may get into. But please do join us after this break. Welcome back to Motivation Monday, where we bring you challenging conversations and inspiring stories. And today's conversation is on opportunities in tech. That is what we're talking about, hoping that you could actually seize some of these opportunities. You would be opened up to realize that there are actually opportunities that you can take advantage of. And I hope so far you're actually learning something. Your eyes are being open to the realities that are out there. My name is Elijah Mokaya, your host. Our guest is Edward Korir, who's a data analyst at Safaricom PLC. And so I want us to get right to this conversation so that we may glean a bit more. Welcome back. Thank you.
There's just something I want to hear from you. You'd mentioned, something about just so to speak, the bad uses of technology. And part of that is, how someone can, in a room, for example, drop a bomb somewhere. But what I want you to maybe speak into is the impersonal nature of tech. If all I'm doing is interacting with a machine, and a machine doesn't necessarily, as much as, it could be artificial intelligence, but it does not have human emotions and human feelings, and all. It may have a level of intellect, but at the level of emotions and feelings, it may not. So how does one who's getting into this tech space guard against being impersonal, because now when you come to the real world and you're interacting with real people, you know, people are not, you can't program people. You can't, you know, issue a series of commands and then you get the reaction that you desire. How does one guard against that?
That's a very good question, first of all, because it tends to happen that the more you spend time with computers, the more you realize that for some people it's because of their personality, the more you realize that you enjoy their company. Yeah, and it's in fact, in Japan, it's also like a pandemic, a big problem that has been happening. There's the emergence of what are called hikikimori. And hikikimori are people who just do not get out of their rooms. They have spent their lives, maybe they learned how to play games online or develop solutions online, but they just, and when I say they don't, I'm telling you, they do not get out of their rooms.
Wow.
Some of them are in their 30s and their 40s, and they started when they were young.
Wow.
And it's a big problem. Older people, their parents do not know how to help them. And so it's a real issue, what you mentioned. So with anything, just like with everything else in life, moderation is key. You need to be able to develop a habit where you break from it. So you need to spend time outside.
Yeah.
I think of I think it's Psalm 19, where it talks about how God created everything. He put the stars in space. The sun rises and sets like a bridegroom coming out to join it, to rejoice, you know. And God has created all of this beauty and wonder, and just to get out and exploit in and of itself breaks that monotony. Yeah. There are things which you will never appreciate, however much you use a computer, but it's right there outside, maybe in a flower, or going for a walk. And so that's something which you need to develop the habit of getting out and interacting with people. I have been using a computer almost daily for maybe 15 years, and it's easy for me to get into that space. But I have a wonderful wife. We spend time together. We go for walks. We try and enjoy life. And most people consider me as someone who is very introverted. They don't think that I speak much. So I may speak to this with some authority. If I'm to say that it's a danger, but you need to try and get out of that, break that monotony. And so I would just advise that moderation is key. Even if you're spending time learning, spend time trying to develop your skill, if you enjoy it, try and break that monotony. But also, I don't think computers, even with all the advancements we're making, they will really never replace people and the value of human beings. No, they can't, especially with the emergence of AI and with the development of very, very complex systems. They're called large language models. Very advanced systems which, in fact, let me surprise you. Do you know the people who develop these systems actually do not know exactly how they work?
Really?
Yes. People do not have the inner workings of how models like ChatGPT arrive at the solution. They know how they've programmed it. They know that if you give this input, that there is this output. But the way the model learns and trains itself, they don't know.
Wow.
So they are very, very advanced systems in terms of how they're able to process data. But with all that, they still cannot beat us in creativity. They cannot beat us in understanding that there is a conscience. I once heard people talking about how they're trying to program the conscience. Now we are starting to move into where the Babylonians were when they were building Babylon. So the computers will never, they can only do what we tell them and how we teach them. They can do it better than us, but they will never beat us at our abilities that God has given us.
And just the full spectrum of human complexity. I mean, sadness and joy and emotions. Sorrow and happiness, and a computer can't comfort.
It cannot. It can pretend to comfort you, but it has no feelings.
All right. Okay, that's useful. Now let's touch a bit on now your specific line, which is data science. So how really, you'd mentioned a bit of that earlier when we began, but how really does that look like? And for someone maybe that is getting an interest, just like you got an interest, sorry, how does that look like? Yeah.
So maybe just a brief description. Data science is it's a field that combines 3 different fields. The first is programming. So having the skill to instruct computers on how to do things.
Yeah.
The second is statistics.
Okay.
You need to have a fairly good understanding of statistics. And the third is business acumen. Now, by business acumen, I mean you need to have knowledge in a specific field. So it could be finance, it could be healthcare, it could be governance, it could be any field. But you combine these 3 and you're able to use that to look at data, prepare data, understand data, mine data, and then using patterns which you have seen in the data, then make predictions of what's going to happen or what something's going to, what a certain outlook will be.
Yeah.
So an example is, let's say if you are running a retail store and you sell, let me give an example, like a Keswick bookshop. Like I imagine many listeners know Keswick, and you as you run your bookshop, you want to ensure that you have got enough copies of a certain book so that anyone who comes can get that book, but you don't want to buy so many that you've spent unnecessary money on stock.
Yeah.
So how do you optimize the number of books that you have? So this is an example of where data science comes in. So what you need to do is you need to first of all look at what are the sales of those books look like. What does it look like month on month or week on week? When is there a peak? When is there a spike in, let's say, interest in a certain book? Is it when a certain pastor comes to town? Or is it a book which maybe is bought around Christmas? So you now look at the data and find out those patterns. When is that peak? And then I mentioned that you need to understand statistics, because statistics is how you break down the data and you use statistical approaches to try and make certain assumptions. So once you've got that information, then you say, well, we expect that we will see an increase in sales at a certain point in the year. So why don't we make sure that by that time we have got this stock, but also this is the number that we expect to have. So data science is all about looking at data with a view of trying to harness the patterns that are in the data to predict the future or to try and estimate what an outlook would be. Yeah, so that's a breakdown of it.
Yeah, okay. And it's something that perhaps someone that is willing to get into it, you know, it's something that they can begin learning slowly by slowly.
Yes, yes. Yeah. And I mentioned that these things are self-taught.
Yeah.
There is no amount of teaching that you can get that prepares you for the world. So there are very many tutorials online that you can go and get your feet wet.
Yeah.
What does it look like just to write a simple program to make a prediction? What does it look like to get data? And the interesting thing is they have what we call data repositories. There are places where you can just go and download data on anything.
Yeah.
Free. You don't need to pay for it. You download. There are competitions there you can get yourself in. I think it's called Kaggle. That's KAGGLE.com. Just go log in there, see what kind of problems people are solving. Take your time to try and understand what it is. Not knowing something is for me, I enjoy not knowing something, because it means I try and learn it. I try and say, okay, so how can I work my way through this? And that's it. Just get your feet wet. A lot of the resources is free and it's online. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, so the world
which is the other blessing of technology again.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. People have availed this. Yeah. Yeah. They call it open source. They try not to let us share what we have for all of our benefit. Yeah. So it's all online.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know whether this is a fair question to ask you, but we seem like we are living in the very future of technology. But when you just imagine the landscape of technology and how things are evolving and progressing, what do you think is the future of technology? What do you think in 10 years, 20 years, 30, 50 years? What are the kind of things we'll be dealing with? Because I think, and I think my assumption is correct here, our parents could never have imagined where we are at currently. And, you know, with just a projection of what we already have now, what do you think the future of technology looks like?
That's also a good question. I think it's a bit hard to predict because of what you also said.
Yes.
We could never really have imagined that we would be where we are. But having said that, the field of artificial intelligence is getting more and more embedded into what we do every day.
Yeah.
And it's becoming part of our life. And I would expect to see that to happen at an increased level. I had mentioned also, because of being within the fourth industrial revolution, that certain jobs may end up being redundant. And so I would expect that maybe in the next 5 years, you would not need many people doing what they're doing. This current field, currently in AI, we're currently in a phase where we are exploring what's called Gen AI, generation AI. And we have reached a point where now AI so like ChatGPT is one of those things where you can ask it a question and it answers you with a lot of accuracy.
Yeah.
But ChatGPT is just in terms of text. There are solutions, similar ones for videos, for images, for all kinds of things, which means and I have started seeing certain billboards where you don't need a production crew or an agency to develop for you a concept. You can just give it an instruction and then it will develop that for you.
Wow.
Yeah. So I would think that field of Gen AI would continue increasing. We'd see it embedded more.
Yeah.
But sad to say, I think many people's a lot of what people do may easily be automated. In fact, currently it's possible to write software using software. Like you can just give it an instruction. Write for me a program which does this, and it does that. So even us as programmers and people who are in the tech field are also worried about our jobs, because apparently that can be done by software.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I would see that happening more and more. Yeah. As the landscape for productivity gets harder, and it's harder for businesses to make money, they'll try and find ways to save, and that might be the direction.
So would you then advise for people to reconsider in terms of what their skill sets are, so that in years to come, your skill sets are not redundant? So you talked about the typesetting. You know, with the advent of computer, if all you had was typesetting skills, then that was considered obsolete.
Yeah.
Would you also advise that people consider that? And as you respond to that, maybe you could give us your final thoughts and advice, you know, regarding this conversation we're having today.
Yes, I would advise people to be as much as you can, find out, get to know what's happening. Don't be so oblivious and so in the dark that you're surprised when you realize nowadays when you go to this hospital or this bank, you don't find anyone there waiting. It's just a robot. Nowadays you have robots serving people food in Japan. Even I think there's a restaurant in Kenya where there are some robots.
Wow.
That you can. So you see, that's an example of that.
So even waiters might lose their.
Already they have started losing their jobs.
Oh no.
Yeah. That's what I was talking about.
Yeah.
So I would advise you to, because there is that with every skill there is the knowledge of it. Then there's what you do.
Yeah.
Try and understand in your skill, how is what I do, how is it replaceable, and how can I learn how that can happen. So if you are a doctor, diagnosis is an example.
Yeah.
So understand what kind of solutions are there out there that can be used in AI.
Yeah.
And should it be that it is me one day who needs to key in and understand, let me keep myself abreast of that. Do not forget your skill, because your skill is your training is important. But that the what you do, how you do part is what you need to try and ensure that you know how AI can be used for that. It doesn't mean that you do it, but just keep yourself abreast.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think my closing remarks would all be about this, and I believe that this is it's God's design for us to to be good stewards of what you have. If you are interested in the field of technology, just start by Googling. That is a good point to start. Just Google.
Yeah.
What can I learn on this? Where can I learn that? And you'll be surprised about how much content there is. In fact, there is more content than you can consume. And if you'd like that, just get to a space where you spend a few hours a day or a few minutes a day, research what's happening, see if there's anything you can learn, and try. I saw an 89-year-old grandmother who, in 5 years, developed a mobile app, and she had no idea.
Wow.
She had no idea of what it was before. 89. Which means anyone can, at any point, can learn.
Yeah.
The other day, I saw Elon Musk putting a post saying, if you want to apply for a job at Tesla, we don't care where you have studied, we don't care what you have done, just share with us your code. Which means it is really, what have I done? What can I learn? That's a kind of market that is there today. So if you're interested in it, just take time, learn, see what is out there, and you'll be surprised at how much you can do.
Wow.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Mr. Edward. I think this was a very insightful and useful conversation, even as we reconsider this landscape of tech and hopefully seize the opportunities that avail themselves. So asante sana.
Yeah, thank you
very
for
much.
having me. Yeah.
Asante. Well, we have come to the end of our conversation today. We were talking about opportunities in tech, and it is my prayer and hope that this has been an insightful conversation for you. It triggers certain thoughts. Is what you are doing replaceable? Can AI do what you're doing and perhaps do it better? And maybe that is something to reconsider as you now upgrade your skills and get, into this space of tech and taking advantage of the opportunities that are available. That is all we had for you for today. Please do join us again next week as we have another conversation on the same. But also to remind you, you can also be part of what we do here at Family Media. You can be part of the family. We have different people doing different things. All you see perhaps is this face here, but behind the scenes, we have a production crew, we have a broadcasting crew, we have just different people doing different things. But also we have partners also that help us to do this. You can become part of this family. And so if you desire to be one of our partners, just send an SMS with the word partner to 20316 and begin your journey of being part of the family. See you next week.